Good evening, everyone. My name is David Motley, and I'm a proud board member of the Art Impact Project. I'll be interviewing or serving as interviewer tonight. Probably don't need much conversation from me. Our guest speaker tonight is amazing. He's a fantastic guest, and this is another one of our series of guest speakers with topical and timely conversations. Again, thank you so much for tuning in tonight. I'm going to give our first word to our founder and executive director, Vicki Marasco, with some important words.
Thank you. Thank you all for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it. This is an important conversation, but I just want to give a quick introduction about our Impact Project to those of you who are not familiar with our organization. We are a nonprofit agency, and our mission is to enhance emotional wellness through creative expression. And we operate by partnering with mental and behavioral health facilities and schools and recovery sites and a shelter and also with the Lake County Jail. And we facilitate specifically designed art programming, working in group settings, sitting typically side by side with our participants. Unfortunately, a lot of it's through virtual means right now, but we're still working, we're still being relevant and trying to do the best work that we can. By using art making as a powerful coping tool, we help people to express themselves in a unique and alternative way when words and capabilities of dealing with emotions are often really challenging for the people that we work with, for all of us. The purpose of us developing the Impact Exchange, this speaker series that we're working with tonight, is twofold. The first is that it's meant to be a community building awareness tool and facility for us to just all be able to connect with one another. And the second purpose of us designing this idea was to help us selfishly, Art Impact Project and our art advocates, to help guide us, to help guide Art Impact Project to broaden our understanding of the many issues and that we face when we're working with our participants, and to better serve the vast and diverse groups that we work with. So we just wanted to let you know why we're doing what we do. We host a different topic and a different event every 2 months. Every 2 months we have something different that we're bringing to light. The purpose is not to have people think that our Impact Project is an expert on any of the topics that we're talking about. We really just want this to be an opportunity for us all to listen, to keep an open mind, an open heart, and hopefully gain greater awareness and create conversation. It's all about conversation. So thanks again for listening and welcome.
So that's a very good segue. Thank you, Vicki. All good things happen with good conversation. And this is not meant to solve the woes of the world. We want to make sure that we speak on tonight's subject with optimistic understanding of the future. But today's topic is quite clearly acknowledging racial inequality. We are celebrating Black History Month this month, and it is part of our, again, topical conversations that we just want to try to facilitate and hear from people who have a better understanding of these things, probably well beyond our understanding of them. And tonight is no exception. Like I said earlier, we have an amazing guest tonight, L. Deshaun Nix. He has an amazing history. He has an amazing and bright future ahead of him. He came to our organization through, we've begun to know him through our connection with North Chicago Community Partners. That is one of our solid organizations and partners with developing core principles of Art Impact Project and advocating for understanding through art and conversations, specifically in North Chicago Community School District. And I know that I'm also an art advocate assigned to Neal Math and Science Academy on Monday mornings. And I work with 8th graders via Zoom. And it's a very rewarding experience. And I'm very happy that we know El, and I'm very delighted we have a chance to speak to him tonight. So that being said, El, I think no one can introduce you better than yourself.
Uh, Definitely want to thank you guys, both Vicky and David, just for the opportunity to be here today. Definitely want to thank everyone who's tuned in. I see some familiar faces, coaches, old coworkers, or whatnot. So I'm just excited about the opportunity. I'm Sheon Nix from Sandusky, Ohio. I don't know if too many people know about Sandusky. Most people know about Cedar Point, but I'm from Sandusky. It sits right on Lake Erie between Toledo and Cleveland. Yeah, I grew up in a community or a neighborhood within Sandusky. It's called the Hancock and Reese area. I would say that at that time, and even probably to this day, it was probably more guns, more drugs, and more criminal activity in a 4-block radius than the entire city combined. And grow up a little bit older. I spent a lot of my time with friends on Hayes Avenue. That's my shirt for the night. But I would say I excelled academically, athletically, and put myself in a position to earn a scholarship to Northwestern. And I've been living, working and living in the city of Chicago or the Chicagoland area ever since.
Amazing. I know that right now you work for Tutoring Chicago. Can you tell us a little bit about what that entails and what you try to accomplish through that after moving on from North Chicago Community Partners?
Not a problem. So Tutoring Chicago, this is actually our 55th year of existence. We got our origins in the Cabrini Green housing development community, and the organization wanted to be a positive outlet and resource for those living in and around that community, and wanted to focus on youth. So we've been working with 1st through 6th graders. Now this year is our 1st year working with 7th graders, and what combines or what unites all of our students together, they all come from families that have financial barriers. So what we do is we provide free one-to-one tutoring on a weekly basis, and we have close to 1,000 students in our program across 4 sites in the Chicagoland area. My role in particular, I spearhead recruitment for volunteers and students. Also, anything that's related to community relations, and just pretty much trying to get our name and our brand in community and let people know that we have a resource. And also in return, like how can we continue to help better the communities in which we serve?
Amazing. So I'm going to come at this. We know that you were an excellent football player, and I guess I'm going to relate to the sports part of this too. To me, sports is a great metaphor for life lessons. I'm a soccer coach. I've played soccer probably since I was 5 years old. I've traveled the world playing soccer. I grew up in the great city of Waukegan. At the time when we were a great melting pot. I know that we had kids on our team from Korea, Vietnam, China, Puerto Rico, Mexico, Honduras, Jamaica. We were the great melting pot. But it wasn't until we moved to play against teams in other markets that were maybe a little bit more homogeneous and didn't necessarily look like we were, that we started to experience a bit of racism. And I think sports is a great vehicle for young people to excel and move on in their lives. But it's also one of the points of friction sometimes. And when kids aren't necessarily able to understand that sometimes the lazy competitors' tendency is to revert to racial comments, I was completely unprepared for that, and I can't even imagine. So can you touch on a little bit about that, Al?
Not a problem. Exactly what you said at the beginning was sports and athletics does, I mean, there's so many different life lessons that you learn through athletics that you can apply in everyday life. I mean, whether it's, your grit, determination, overcoming adversity, things that you can take off the playing surface that you can apply in your profession or just everyday life. The one thing I can definitely say about athletics is it's one of those things that for the most part, it breaks down racial and social economic barriers. I mean, if you're playing a sport like football, which is the ultimate team sport, you're playing with a variety of different people and you're all working towards one goal. So I definitely, and also I look at athletics as it's a conversation starter. So it may be times where someone may not want to have a conversation or talk to you, but sports almost allows or pushes for that conversation. And your point about those lazy athletes who resort to name calling or just using racial comments. I've definitely experienced that. Our football and basketball team we're pretty athletic, And, we played surrounding teams. Like, we didn't deal with a lot, but if we went to, Columbus or Cleveland or certain suburbs of those cities, if we're getting out to a lead, or, we're playing pretty well that day, you'll get either just comments from players, parents and guardians in the stands. So we definitely experienced that, again, at the elementary, middle school, high school level. Northwestern, I had a pretty short career, but I did have, an incident going into my freshman year. This is before the school year started. We had just came back from camp, and me and a couple teammates were just going on our way to a house party in Evanston, and it was just a group, in the streets or whatnot, and we got pulled over by the police, and I actually got singled out, and the cop, asked me my name. I told him my name. I told him that, I am incoming student athlete at Northwestern, and he literally looked at me and said, "You can't be. You literally cannot be a student at Northwestern." And just that incident right there is like outside of my skin. Like, what else could be the determining factor? I probably had like a hoodie on or a Northwestern hat, but in that one instance, he had already judged me and put me in a box, and it was, I can only think that it was based off the color of my skin.
The connection is
Well,
very.
hold on a second. So that's an unfortunate circumstance, and I know that I've experienced those kinds of things too. Not being someone singled out, but being in that group of people where someone has been singled out. So my question then to you is, what could your coaches have done, and what did your peers do? What solutions do you think were triggered because of that, or did you just shrug it off and move on?
I mean, one thing that Northwestern did, and I think they still do it, it's a police ride-along program. So as incoming freshmen, I don't know if it's all sports, but I know the football players as freshmen, we got to ride along with police officers in Evanston. And it was an opportunity to kind of learn about the city and build a relationship with authority figures in Evanston. So that was definitely great. As far as other things, just having a conversation, with coaches, whether it's your position coach. Well, I have my position coach on here, Coach Fagans, but having a conversation with teammates, with coaches, but also just with just other people in your network, and that conversation hopefully leads to action, and then those who may have either a better position or a privilege, getting them to be allies alongside of us to, push for that, those same, I would say equalities as well. We definitely need allies. And then I would also say, just like, you don't really shrug it off, but I mean, it's happened so much, from being a little kid in my neighborhood to even now that it continues to happen. So, it's not going to take, it's not me as an individual who's going to change it. It's definitely going to take a group effort, and, more people who see those things as just wrongs or negatives to speak up and speak out to other people in their network as well.
I think you hit on a really great, you're like helping me with all my segues. You spoke about neighborhood, and I know when we first tuned in, you and I and Vicky this evening, you showed off your amazing shirt. And I asked you right away what that's about. Can you show it off to our friends?
Not a problem.
And tell us a little bit about what that means?
Not a problem. So like I said, the neighborhood I grew up in, the intersection was Hancock and Reese. But going into my 8th grade year, we moved from that community. But we all, like me and my friends who played basketball and football, a lot of them stayed on this street called Hayes Avenue. And it was actually the street where our school was at. And it was just, I would say 20 to 25, 13 to 18-year-old young men and young women who were just dealing with life, the good, the bad, the ugly, and, just interacting, engaging with each other, trying to motivate each other. But that was, I would say, my formative years were on Hayes Avenue, all the way until I left for college. The shirt itself, like I said, it says Hayes Avenue, but my cousin, Jordan Evans, is a really, really just, dynamic graphic art designer. And he's worked with LeBron and Jay-Z, works with a ton of people. And he designed this shirt, I would say, about 5 years ago. So whenever I have an opportunity, I wouldn't even be on this discussion or this panel or if it wasn't for the experiences that I had on Hayes Avenue and just my upbringing. But I also try to showcase and illustrate and just promote other people. So it's a little, it's a double meaning.
Awesome. So that's another important conversation, and that is what kind of opportunities presented themselves to you that maybe you didn't realize were opportunities at a young age, or maybe you overlooked them. Can you touch on that?
Yeah, and opportunities in any particular area.
Any kind of area, yeah.
Well, I would say because I did pretty well academically, amongst my peers, I sometimes had different opportunities, whether it was being in competition for academics or sitting on student council. I also did, pretty well athletically. So being able to be a part of traveling teams or just being able to travel. A lot of the people in my neighborhood or my circle of friends, for one, we didn't have a lot of money. I don't think any of us took family vacations. So, through athletics, I was able to travel and see outside of my community and see that how other people live and to be able to interact with people outside of, again, those in my community. So those were definitely some opportunities, and it was really just I would say most of it was based off academics first and then athletics.
That's important. You have an amazing also curriculum. You got a great degree from a very prestigious university, so you have athletics, but because of your injury, you were able to fall back on your cerebral muscle. So that's awesome.
Yeah, I joke a lot, but I probably had the shortest career in college football history. Coach Fakins know I literally I beat out Ben Roethlisberger for Player of the Year in the state of Ohio my senior year. You fast forward 4 or 5 months, I had a meniscal transplant. So I worked out and trained over the summer for maybe a month and a half, and I was a week and a half in the camp, and my college football career was over. So academics definitely had to play a role, and that kind of goes back to our earlier conversation about how athletics or sports provide you an opportunity to have a conversation or discussion or to meet other people or break down some of those social, racial, economic barriers. And being at a school or at an institution like Northwestern, before I was always a student athlete. So I get to Northwestern where most people didn't look like me. Most people had, came from better schools than mine, better neighborhoods than mine, and I didn't have my shield anymore. So I didn't have athletics anymore. So what I did is I actually made academics my sport. So it was just a shift in my mentality, especially at a school like Northwestern.
Focusing your attention on something that you can attain. An A-type personality, I can tell you, and that's okay. But I think education is really important to talk about right now. I know during COVID, when most school districts, I think if all school districts have reverted to remote learning, I think it really exposed digital divide and the disparity in terms of access. None felt most than in some of our socioeconomically challenged and also underserved populations. Of course, me being in Waukegan, I've seen this exposed to a great extent. So can you talk a little bit about what you're doing as a professional with the organization to try to close that gap and ways that you're highlighting the opportunities in that too?
I can definitely do that. So at Tutoring Chicago, like I said, we've been a site-based tutoring program since the 60s. And March, when the entire world was kind of shut down, and even, I would say I'm a little bit biased because I'm an employee, but I was impressed with our organization. We moved almost 850 students from site-based tutoring with their volunteers to digital tutoring in a matter of like 2.5 weeks. We were able to get out, I think we've given out 450 different Chromebooks to students who had a need and headsets. So that was the start of the process of closing that gap and making sure our students are still getting connected to their tutors and other resources. But some of the things that we found were we gave a Chromebook but didn't have Wi-Fi, or we gave a Chromebook and they were using hotspot, but a lot of our families may live in a housing development or apartment complex, so that hotspot was shared with other people, or it's multiple youth in the home, which it was only 1 or 2 devices. So it was so many different things that our families or the population that we work with, just barriers and roadblocks that they were facing. That as an organization, we were trying to make sure our students have those. So several months in, we are definitely in a better position. But like you said, it exposed a lot of that digital divide and just a lack of resources. And even when you give some resources, it's 3 or 4 other ones that the family still needs to still have an opportunity to get a great education. So this year, we went completely digital. All of our volunteers and students, we have hosted sessions. I see a couple of our tutors on here. So all of our tutoring is hosted on Zoom. We have hosted sessions Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday night, and we also are providing different workshops. So for our seventh graders, we did a workshop with PwC, and it's just, again, trying to expose our students to just more resources, more opportunities. We had a workshop recently where Test Prep Chicago did a workshop for our fifth, sixth, and seventh graders, and it was all about the high school selection process and selective enrollment. So I'm pretty, it's always that buzzword or that phrase that it's been a loss of learning. One thing that we've been trying to do as an organization is look at that differently. That traditional education, the norm before, and for some populations wasn't working well. So what we've been trying to look at is what's the positives. How many students and even some of our volunteers have learned or acquired a ton of different skills because we're in a situation we're in. So not looking at it as a negative, but what are all the different our first graders know how to share a screen and do a little bit more than some of the tutors sometimes. So we look at that as a positive.
Great. So that is, again, a great segue to ask you this question. What is your definition of inequality?
Yeah, inequality is just let me start by saying that I'm not an expert. I'm not going to solve the world problems tonight, whether this topic or any topic. I would say that I'm an expert in me. So a lot of what I'm saying tonight is just based off my own experiences, my own observations, and my upbringing. So I want to start by saying that I'm not an expert, but inequality is just, I would look at it as different people have different resources or different people have different opportunities and some people don't. And I think that the state of the world right now, or just, this conversation, it stems back from like 200, 300, 400, 500 years, and things that took place from slavery, slave trade, and all of those different hardships. It plays a role in everything that takes place today, from housing to employment to so pretty much anything that's taking place today is directly or indirectly connected to those life back then. So, and that's what makes it tough now, because it's so rooted. And, I think, with our topic being acknowledging racial inequality, I think it starts there. I think we, for one, have to acknowledge it and, make a decision of how we want to go about personally and professionally and just as individuals to make those changes going forward. But it starts with acknowledging that those hardships and those things that did happen, they were horrible, and they play a role in everything that takes place today.
So clearly there's a disparity between the availability and access to resources. And,
most definitely.
That's a good example, probably, or that's the way to conceptualize it. But can you cite some other examples in terms of that disparity or unequal access to resources?
Yeah, I mean, just we can just go with education. For example, from CPS to private schools, we just did a recent workshop, and some of the information that was shared in this workshop from our partner at Test Prep Chicago, I would say a good 60, maybe 75% of our students that were in that workshop may not have ever had that information before, or had it communicated so clearly, where someone from another zip code, based off their parents and guardians, or again their zip code, they may have been getting this information since they were in the third or fourth grade. So from that disparity right there, or it's just, again, resources when it comes to, let's say, athletics, being able to go on travel teams or get equipment and things like that, again, based off that household's family income or just connection to resources. It's not even a question, am I going to get my cleats for the game, where someone from my community or zip code that I come from, those cleats or those gloves and things like that may come from a coach, or may come from someone that's not in your household. And that's consistent on a lot of different levels, and again, in different instances.
But you and I both cited that we're not going to solve the world's problems.
Nah, not at all. Not tonight.
We wanted to ensure this conversation, but what can we as regular citizens do, and regular people in the world that can work together and have these great conversations? What could we do in our local level or in our networks of people that maybe could change the dynamic, or maybe give us some suggestions on what we could do to open our eyes and ears to maybe understand this a little bit better?
Not a problem. I think it starts with what we're doing now, just being able to have a conversation. I think it starts with a conversation, and then I think with that, before you start having a conversation, it starts with acknowledging those racial inequalities and the privilege a person may have based off either your zip code, your color of your skin. And I think from that point, once you acknowledge it and you're able to make a decision, am I going to be a part of the solution or part of the problem? So I think those are the first two steps. And then once you make that decision, okay, I'm going to be for change and want to help people out and push the envelope so other people have resources and opportunities. And even that playing field is having that influence or having that conversation with other people who may not. So taking information that we talk about today, and whether it's at a Thanksgiving, whether it's your coworkers, whether you're out, and just sharing that information. One thing I can say, and again, I'm not an expert in the topic, but I'm an expert in me, is where people use their influence, use their voice to help help and create change. And I think it starts with that individual, starts with that conversation.
Do you think that social media plays a big role in perpetuating the problem or helping to create these conversations?
I'll say it's a little bit of both. I say social media itself is just a platform. What tilts it whatever way is the people who take advantage of that platform and whatever message they put out there. So I don't think social media itself is the issue. I think it's having more people who are for creating change and bringing people together and building relationships, more people speaking up and out about injustices and different things like that. I think that is what's going to tilt it in the favor of bringing the world together.
Right. And we all witnessed outrage and the outpouring of outrage over the past many months, hyper-focused through the COVID crisis.
Yeah.
What kind of optimistic message can you then share with all of us as we are mindful of this and are conscious of this, and we, of course, have acknowledged this? What do you think could be the next step? Again, you're not an expert. None of us are experts. What would you suggest?
My suggestion is, for one, just continue that conversation. Again, when you're around colleagues, family members, just in general, or also using that platform as well to bring people together. Another thing I think will be beneficial, I'm actually going to give you guys a homework assignment that I think will definitely help to create that dialogue and have that conversation. There were two movies that came out recently. So you guys have your notepad out, get them ready, because this is going to be a homework assignment. So one is the film American Skin. I think that is an amazing movie that was my wife and I watched recently. And I think that it definitely shares information and creates a conversation. You get the perspective of a lot of different people based off an instance that took place in a movie. And I think, of course, it's fictional, it's a movie, but what took place in the movie happens every day. So watching this movie and, again, taking your stance, it may be some people that's on the call who may be against it, but you take this information and you process it yourself and use that information to have further conversation. So that's one. The other one is Judas and the Black Messiah. Just watched it recently, and it's based off a true story. So what makes this movie pretty powerful, and one of the reasons I want to bring it up, is because, again, it's based off a true story. And so for me, as a Black man, or just a Black person in America, you look at institutions like your FBI, your authorities, and you want to trust, you want to build a relationship, you want to build a bond, you want to be together. But when you watch this movie and see that the death of Fred Hampton was pretty much led or orchestrated by the FBI and J. Edgar Hoover, it makes it really, really tough to create a unity and a bond with authority figures. So that will be my homework assignment for everyone, just to simply watch those movies. It can be with family, it can be with coworkers, and just further the conversation.
Those are great points. One of my friends at work just this morning was telling me about Judas and the Black Messiah and said, I grew up on the street right by that guy.
Yeah.
I was like, what? Tell me more. I'd love to know more. So he said, we'll talk. We'll talk. So I'm really happy. This is very topical again.
See, he's creating dialogue. And another
Dialogue, right? And that's
reason, I was going to say, another reason that makes that relevant. I don't know if anybody saw the article recently about I think it was a New York detective who, on his deathbed, talked about the FBI having a hand in the death of Malcolm X. And again, you want to trust, the government. You want to trust, your authorities and federal government. I mean, your federal authorities. And these were two men who had a great influence and had a pretty big impact in a short of their career. And they were pretty much assassinated by our country's government.
Well, I think that's an important point. And I only have one more question. I promise everyone I'll give you an opportunity to also ask Ella some questions. But can you talk a little bit about then how that's related to the skepticism of the COVID vaccine? And how do you feel as a Black man of this country? Do you feel as though it's your responsibility to lead the charge and take that vaccine, or what do you think about this whole conundrum that it presents?
Yeah, again, speaking as an expert of me, I mean, there's been so many instances in U.S. history where Black people, or both male and female, were used inexperienced. So, from Tuskegee to just other instances of, experimenting with medicine, didn't play in our favor. So, whether through conversations, through reading, through talking to other people, or just the history, it makes you a little weary of being willing to take the vaccine. And I can speak for myself. Like, I don't think I would continue to wash my hands, wear a mask, and all those good things, but I just personally wouldn't do it. And a lot of it is based off the history of being an African American in this country.
And that is a real thing. That is a real thing that you have to be mindful and conscious of, El. And that's why I wanted to ask that question. I think it's again an important conversation to have, that maybe you approach it with some skepticism, you as a personal individual.
Yeah.
Right. So we're right at the 7:38 mark. This is the point of tonight's program in which we open up the floor to all of the participants to maybe ask questions. Elle and I could probably talk all night, but I don't want to monopolize the conversation. So please, if anyone has a question, just raise your hand and we'll call on you. And then you can unmute yourself to ask Elle a question, or just maybe make an observation, or maybe okay, Michelle Gorski, please unmute. No?
Don't be shy.
I think she's wiping.
I'm not shy. I was just checking in. I was trying to reconfigure my. We're so thankful for you to be here, and I think it's so important what you're talking about. And dialogue is always important. I think we realize that in the work that we do with Art Impact, in every person that we talk to when we do our sessions.
I definitely thank you for being a part of the conversation, and yeah, I'm glad to be here.
So I think I maybe have a question for Coach Fagans.
Coach Fagans.
Coach Fagans. Hey.
Yes.
Hello, Coach Fagans.
Hi, how are you?
Thank you so much for tuning in with us. Again, Elle has such an amazing resume. But what did you see in Elle as a wide receiver coach and as a football player? What did you see in him? What was your vision, and what did you see his future looking?
Well, as you can tell already tonight, he's an expert. Even though you don't want to claim it, but he's an expert. And that expert he was a multi-talented player that I always felt that he was an unknown superstar that was never known because of his athletic ability. I had the ability to go visit him at his home. So to see what he's doing now, I think it's great. And I mean, what you see is what you get from him. And I don't need to say no more than that. Besides, he's a great young man. What he's doing, I expected. Because again, it's all started with academics. He was an academic guy that basically came from the hood. And you go, wow, you can tell that motivation within him that he's going to be successful.
So you visited him at his home on Hayes Avenue?
I think it was Hayes Avenue, but I know
Nah,
what was it? What
at
was it
that
at?
time we had moved to the other side of the city. But if I wasn't at school or practice, I was on Hayes Ave. So he came to my house in a different neighborhood, but I was on Hayes
Uh,
Ave every day.
well, good. I will say this, and again, the impact exchange and what you guys are doing is excellent. And I say that because I have had participated myself in multiple Zooms. When you said being a solution, I was trying to be a solution as a coach. Uh, my last Zoom was on reform races,
Hmm.
and I dealt with, and I said dealt with. I always say my friends now. Grand Dragon of the Ku Klux Klan was on my
Hmm.
Zoom. A former neo-Nazi, and a black guy. I don't know I'm gonna call him that hated white people. They always reform racists, and so all I'm saying, guys, is what you guys are doing is great, and I'm so proud and continue to have conversation.
Thank you.
Thanks, Coach.
Thank you.
So we have Mr. Stephen Moore has raised his hand. Mr. Moore, if you'd like to ask your question, please.
Yes, thank you. So, excuse me for not having my camera on. I'm driving from a long day of work. But, Al, as it relates, you talked about growing up on Hancock and Reed, being from Sandusky, Ohio, and I know you, of course. But can you talk a little bit about like your passion for giving back to the community and what sparked that passion?
That's a great question, Mr. Moore.
I would say, I would definitely say just what I saw and what I observed. I would say it started with, I would say first and second grade. I would see, I would go to the high school and basketball and football games, and the people that I saw playing sports were like superstars in my eyes. And I wanted to be just like them. I thought if I can be just like them, I can go to the NFL or NBA and make a difference. And fast forward a couple of years, those same guys who I idolized were back in my neighborhood selling drugs. So I always wondered at a young age, what was it? Was it lack of resources? Was it lack of a two-parent household? Or what was the roadblock that they faced to put them in that position? So that's what started my passion, or just my thought process of, I want to put myself in a position to speak up and out for communities like mine and connect people to resources. So I've been trying to do that since the fourth or fifth grade. I think that's where it came from. And it's just seeing so many people have so much potential and not being able to reach their potential because they either didn't have a resource, didn't have a positive outlet, or didn't have all the things necessary for them to make it to the next level, or they just, it wasn't even the resources, but they were beaten down in so many different ways that they didn't have that grit and that resiliency to continue on. So that's where I would say my passion comes from. And I just like seeing people smile. So, whenever you have to connect a person to a resource that's going to impact their life, like I personally love that. So, Steve, when you, and Vicky, I don't know if you know, like Steven is the one I do our conversation and cocktails with, and all of our events. So, I mean, that's definitely where that passion starts from. And I'm going to be a lifelong person who's seeking to connect people to resources and just spread positivity.
And that is your armor and shield as a change agent. You have to be that advocate and walk and talk and be the real deal. Otherwise, you're probably not trustworthy. Like some of those folks that were those great sports people in your eyes, but then when they came back and started doing dangerous deeds, it probably soured in your mind, and you became an advocate for your own lives. That's amazing.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, any more questions? Hold on, I think we got one.
Anybody?
Can I reverse it and ask a question?
Yeah.
I see one of my teammates on here who is, just an amazing man. We came in at the same time in Northwestern. Does amazing work. Mr. Stuckey, I would just like to get your thoughts or just on this topic. He's been doing a series that he's been posting on LinkedIn, and it's been amazing this entire month. So would love to get your perspective just on this topic and some ideas of the solutions that you have for this topic.
Oh, thanks, Al. I appreciate it. Just love listening in, and honestly, I've been just staring at my screen, just smiling, seeing all the different faces, people. The reality of the situation is we're likely preaching to the choir, right? You could be doing anything with your time right now, but the fact that you're on this call to have this conversation about racial inequalities mean you're part of the solution. And so that's the difficulty in having these type of Zoom meetings. It's not to discourage it. I think it's important because I think iron sharpens iron. And so the more we talk about these things, it may give you the confidence and give you the enthusiasm to go out and fight the good fight. But the reality is the people who really need to hear some of these things are not here. But we all have a sphere of influence, which is what Elle was speaking to. So as long as we all can be a leader and a voice for change within our sphere of influence, then that will create an impact, right? The power of one is significant. And so I don't want anybody to ever like diminish themselves to say, well, it's only me, this problem's so big, this problem's so vast, how do I tackle it? And I say that because I give myself that same pep talk all the time. I focus on discussing, in a lot of my work, I focus on discussing some of the problems that are facing the urban Black communities, the down pressure that's keeping it and retarding its growth, but I also talk about the problems that exist within the Black community, the things that we are doing that are preventing us from being able to move forward. And sometimes those conversations are hard, and there's a lot of problems. It is a conundrum, like you said, there's 1,000 problems wrapped into one. And so just trying to pick one and focus on it sometimes can be difficult because one thing seems like you're just putting a band-aid over a problem and not getting to the root of it. And so I guess if I was to leave everybody with anything, I would say let's have authentic conversations. I'm sure, even though they're all good people on this call, I'm sure there's somebody who listened to some of the things that El shared and probably didn't 100% agree with what he said. And I guess I would challenge somebody to say, speak up. I think we have to have the difficult conversations. And that's what I've been trying to create even on LinkedIn, which is a business forum where people are afraid to speak up because ultimately in this cancel culture that we exist in right now, it could cost you your job. So I understand the trepidation associated with speaking out in a business forum. But I've tried to create the conversation because I believe that the people who have the power to make some of these changes within the corporate world are on LinkedIn. And that's where a lot of these conversations have been uh, compartmentalized, right? They've been kept to Instagram, they've been kept to Facebook or things like that. They've not been in a business form. But just like football is a metaphor for life, the corporate world is absolutely a microcosm of America. And so if anything that we see exist in America, we see it in the corporate world. And to some degrees, it's in a worse form, right? Because in the regular world we can choose where we live, right? A lot of times people on the racial lines live parallel lives. We talk about these two separate Americas, but when you come together, it's kind of forced integration when you walk into the corporate world for everybody to try to provide a living for themselves. So in many ways you're forced to interact with people that you may be with. I've had conversations with colleagues who said, hey, I grew up in the middle of Iowa, I didn't go to school with a Black kid until I got to college, or vice versa for people. And you can't pick and choose the environment you're born into. It is what it is. But you can make the decision to say, hey, regardless of my rearing, regardless of what I was taught, regardless of, the lack of interaction with other races of people or what have you, I'm deciding to be the change, and it starts here for my family. No different than Elle or myself saying, "Hey, our families didn't. We're first generation, graduates of college, and that's us basically deliberately saying the buck stops with us." Same thing can happen if you grew up in a family of racists. To say my children won't suffer through the same, and I choose at this point to do something different. So a lot of things that I'm saying because it's such a big and vast topic, but hopefully something I said resonated with you.
Absolutely.
I just want to let you guys know I didn't pay him to say that. Thank you, Stuck.
So it looks like we have a question from a couple people. So Lee Borgeson.
Hi there. Al, you're the best. I'm so excited to have this opportunity to hear you speak. My question to you is, how can I be the most effective ally, specifically as it relates to, partnering with the youth in our communities? For me, not being Black and being white, I want to make sure that I'm as educated as I can be to understand, what they might be going through that I never experienced.
Hello, Lee. Well, you already started the process, like by you making a conscious decision to want to have that interaction and to want to create change. Like that's the biggest thing right there. Just having that mindset, and then it's just coming from a position of just understanding that it may be a difference, but coming alongside and being aligned, asking questions, and just listening. Like, so I think you will learn more just by listening, and you know, you're doing it now within the organization at Tutor Chicago. But yeah, I would say interactions and engagement with people in that community, and then using your sphere influence at home, at work, and just your network and the things you learn, educating the people that's in your network as well. But again, like by you even wanting to do that, that's a start right there.
Great.
Think so.
No problem.
Looks like we have a question from Susan Treichman.
Hello, Susan.
Hello, Al. Another huge fan of the Sheons. I have a question. So where I work, we're doing a dinner and dialogue, and the opportunity is to have people come into a restaurant that I run and buy dinners and take it home, obviously. And then we ask questions. So the dialogue comes to talking about concept over dinner with people you eat dinner with. And the questions, some of them are fun and light, and some of them are social justice packed. And the best part is I work with at-risk youth. The youth also answer the questions. So all of us white folks think, and this actually has happened, that the educational system is fine for everyone. And then our students are saying, no, this is horrible. Like, we were never educated in high school. And we found it to be super beneficial. It's all good. But what I've learned is that if us as white people don't feel it, don't touch it, then we can't relate to it. And so we hear so many of us during COVID, it's like, oh, I haven't been able to leave my mansion for 6 days and I'm so sad. And it's like, lock yourself in the bathroom and feel how it feels like to be incarcerated for 6 days. So what are the ideas out there that can help us understand, feel what others feel, as opposed to just read about it? We all read, we're good folks. We try to be there, but it's until we feel, until we walk in someone else's shoes. What are some other ideas out there so we can help other people feel the depth of the challenge?
I would say, I would definitely say it starts with that interaction engagement. Like you say, COVID makes it a little bit different to come out your home, but, those communities in Chicago, whether it's Inglewood or Roseland, go out and volunteer, go out and spend time in those communities. And I think you will learn a lot. I think it puts people in a position of understanding and get that feel. So like you said that, I had to drive from Lake Forest all the way to south side of Chicago. I had to be in traffic. And you have individuals who live in a 4 or 5 block radius who they never left that community. You live in Chicago, you live in this community in that 4 block radius, you never went downtown. So being able to have those conversations and going into the communities, and I think that's definitely a start. And like you said, just being open to learning. I think that is, again, acknowledging and being open to learning, and just going into the communities, and whether it's volunteer work or just having an onus to go out more and get out of your bubble and get out of that comfort. I think that's definitely a start.
Thank you. Great.
You're welcome.
So I have a question for you, Al.
Mm-hmm.
As Susan was bringing up, and some of the things that Mr. Stuckey had to say, I'm relating it back to Art Impact Project. Yep. And we, like I said earlier, that we work with such a diverse community, and we, how can we, like Susan's question is, how can we relate as best we can to be able to, I think we do a pretty good job of being able to gain trust, that people know when we go, we're the only program that actually sits side by side with the inmates in the Lake County Jail. We go right into the pods and work with them. And, at first, I think there was the hesitation, like, here's the white art ladies coming in. Art is a little intimidating to some people, but, very quickly we were able to gain their trust, because we return, we're there when we say we're going to be there, and we listen. I mean, I cannot relate to half the lives that, no matter what color their experiences, I can't relate to it, but I want to understand. I want to be able to be there for them, to listen. And how do we make sure that we're not saying the wrong things, or that's my question, is just how can we, as Susan was saying, how can we feel, how can we, be more empathetic?
Yep.
Not trying to say, oh, I know how you feel, because I don't.
I would say a couple of different things. One is, one of the best ways, I think the most impactful ways, is listening. Listening to those that you interact and engage with, hearing their stories. And I think in the process of listening, and especially if you're face to face, you can see body language, you can see how things affect certain people and what people are passionate about. I think that's definitely one. I think another thing is, and I know I experienced it, in my neighborhood and just growing up, where, coming in with the mentality of not that savior mentality. You don't, I have privilege or I have wealth or whatever, that I got to come in and save these young black boy. I would personally say, again, speaking of my own experience and people that's, like me, we're some of the most resilient people who have grit. So we don't need that to be saved. What we need is people to come alongside of us and be allies. So I think that's definitely one. And just being understanding that we are different. Everyone is differences no matter what. Older, younger, black, white, whatever, is differences in, being able to understand each other's differences. And I think in that process of listening, you'll see that it's more commonalities than differences. I think another thing is just being authentic. What's your reasoning when you're interacting and engaging? Is it selfish? Is it, I genuinely want to learn, I genuinely want to help or have an impact? I think that's another one. And the last one I would say is just being consistent. I know in my community, we had tons of people who came in and you see them for a week or two and they leave. I think the consistency builds a relationship. Consistency lets people know that I can trust you. I can build a relationship. So, it's going to be some good days. It's going to be some bad days. Again, it could be literally you go into a community and maybe a shooting or something takes place. Are you going to run away? Because you have the opportunity to kind of leave that situation, but a lot of the families, they don't. That's reality every day. So listening, coming in with a mentality to be more aligned versus savior, understanding, consistency, and authenticity. I think those would be really, really good tools to kind of take that going forward.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
I just want to add that I know we get run out of time. Those last 2 points, though, so critical.
Yeah.
That consistency and that authenticity. Because this question I've been asked a million times about just not wanting to say the wrong things or just not knowing where to go or how to start. And you're going to say the wrong thing.
Yep.
It doesn't. If you say the wrong thing with the right heart, I think people will forgive you for it, right? And
Yep.
so the reality is, there are people who are struggling in our community who own people who parent who's supposed to love them don't.
Yep.
I worked at a homeless shelter on the south side of Chicago in Bronzeville. We got all the students because their homes wasn't safe, and so they came to us. I couldn't relate to them because even though I was raised in the projects on the south side of Chicago, I had a mother who would give her life to keep me safe. So I don't know what it feels like to walk inside your house that's supposed to be a safe haven and have to look around your shoulder and look over your shoulder because you're worried about verbal abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, or whatever the case may be. And so just you showing up authentic. I mean, you showing up authentic and caring and being consistent to be there for that person. That's all they'll care. They won't care
Yep.
what you look like. They won't care anything other than the fact that here's somebody that's here.
Yep.
And they don't have to be here. They're not being paid to be here. They're here because they care about me and my well-being.
And I've said that. So another part of my role and responsibility at Tuna Chicago is I lead the majority of our orientations. And I say that at the beginning of the orientation is we can teach, coach, guide, give you every resource possible. The most important and most impactful thing you can do is be consistent. Because the students we work with in this population, they've had mom, dad, aunt, uncle. They had other people in their life who's supposed to love them come in and out their life. So the most important thing our volunteers can do at Tuna Chicago, or just this topic as a whole, is be consistent. That's going to be the most impactful of that student and puts our students and the individuals in a position to be change agents at home, school, and the community.
Right. Next question is from Talia. I can't read that.
Hi, I'm 22. I'm living in Boston right now, and I've loved this discussion so far. And I kind of want to talk about generations and how each generation is dealing or understands and visualizes this in a very different way. And I think coming right now, especially in the digital age, you're seeing that, at least from my followers or people that I follow, a lot of people are posted right after events that were occurring throughout these past few months. And, that sometimes starts to slow down, and you know that it's important, and you know that it should be recognized longer than just the week or two or the month that it's recognized in. And I guess with that being said is, what are ways to keep up with recognition beyond just social media, especially when we're fighting this digital age, sitting in front of screen? And how do you communicate with different generations, especially, that view things very differently than how I grew up or am growing up with all of these new discussions?
No, I love the question. I think it's what you said is, for example, with George Floyd, it was all over the news. It hit the world and everybody was into it, reacted or responded in different ways. And you don't really hear about it anymore. So I think the solution to that is it takes people like us, everyday people without media or the news, to continue that conversation. And again, with COVID and pandemic, we can't get out as much, but to use technology for our benefit and use social media for our benefit. So, it can be a simple, not even like this platform today. You can get 10 or 15 of your friends and say, hey, we're going to have a Zoom call next Sunday, and just continue that conversation. So if there's 10 of you having that conversation, everyone else, you all have your own network, own influence. And so challenge them to have another conversation with 10 other people. So I think it's, because media, it's biased sometimes in different ways, but it takes people like us who are for change, about change, and trying to, continue to push the envelope for change, to continue to have those conversations with those people in our network, and using, from text to social media or whatever platform for our benefit. And the fact that it's so, right hands-on or right, it's instant, it actually almost makes it a little bit easier and a little bit more impactful as well. Just trying to get more people than the 40 people on this call to continue that conversation.
Absolutely.
Great. And Coach Fagans, I see that you needed to leave. Thank you so much for your comments and tuning in with us tonight.
Thank you, and keep it up.
Thank
you,
Proud
Coach.
of you guys.
Thank you, Coach.
So we got a couple of questions through the chat. Again, we're running a little bit further along than
We have time for
we
two
have time
questions.
for two more questions.
I'm at home, so I'm not going anywhere.
Right. One of them is from James Lynch. Are you still with us, James? I don't know. He lives in the North Shore area. And he says, what do we do when there are very few people of color in our area? We want to invite diversity, but we don't have neighbors of color.
For one, is if that's the status of that community, go out in other communities. I worked in North Chicago, and I know the demographics there, and that's a neighbor of Lake Forest or whatnot. So going to other communities and interacting, engaging, and then using your home base to create opportunities for other people, people of color to come there. So whether it's, it may be, a basketball league that takes place in North Chicago, could it be something created like that in Lake Forest? So how do you create an opportunity for people of color to come to those communities? So I think that would definitely be, and again, speaking from my own experience, I think that would be an opportunity to kind of create that dialogue, going out, building relationships, and as you build a relationship, invite to your community, because I think it's a learning experience for both sides.
Right, I agree. The next question is from Alex Rodriguez. How do you encourage youth from communities like yours and like in North Chicago and Waukegan to be involved with their hobbies, whether it be art or sports, but also be academically focused? From my experience growing up as a brown kid in Waukegan, we often choose one or the other.
Again, just speaking from personal experience, that story I shared earlier, I think first and second grade, I thought that it was going to be, athletics. That was going to be the ticket or key. But I saw literally in that 1 or 2 year period, I saw those same guys, again, who were superstars back in the community that I lived in selling drugs. So I learned at a very young age and very quickly that it wasn't just athletics, and that academics will put me in a position to reach goals, to get outside of my community, and put me in a position to have a resource to speak up and out for communities like mine. And then just my personal story of being playing at a high level and earning all these awards and accomplishments for athletics, and it's completely wiped away because of a knee injury. So academics is always going to be that constant. Academics is always going to be the thing that again works to even or level the playing surface. So it's really about educating those in those positions. And again, it can come from a variety of different ways. It can be a teacher, it can be a coach, it can be a parent or guardian who continues to push and be a fan of education and the importance of it. I always consider myself, I'm the coolest nerd you ever find because I did really, really well academically. But it was, I knew that academics will put me in a position like this to be on this platform to talk to you guys. So I would say continue to push for it. And if it's not a parent and guardian, in a lot of those neighborhoods, it's your parent and guardian may not even go to college. So it could be a coach, it can be a mentor, but just other people who are fans of education, being in that young person's life and pushing for it.
Great. So just a couple more questions and then we're going to wrap up as promised. We've had an amazing night. I think Mr. Is it Stuckey? Stuckey?
Yep, Stuckey.
Stuckey, you've given me two really amazing quotes tonight. One is iron sharpens iron, and the other one is it's okay to say the wrong thing with the right heart. So one of our viewers wanted to find out more information on your podcast so they could tune into that. If you could give a quick commercial. And then Al, if you could wrap up then with this question, and that given the fact that COVID has been just a carpet bomb or neutron bomb to our communities, what do you think the role of art could play in improving our communities and also healing our minds and souls as we recover from this?
Not a problem. You're 100% right. COVID has, again, I don't know if I've ever read about, heard about it's always something going on in the world, but I don't know if I've ever heard of it, something that affected the entire world at one time. Again, I can't think of anything, but as far as, say the last part one more time.
What do you think the role of art could play?
There we go. So, well, the way I view art is just a form of expression, whether it's, writing a book, whether it's painting, whether it's music, whether it's dance, it's a form of expression. So I think that, just continue to find ways to express feelings, thoughts, emotions, and all those things. I think that, again, it's not just the art that we see on the wall or murals or anything. I think everyone is artistic in different ways. And as it relates to this conversation, I would say communication is a form of art. And taking the information that we shared tonight and having a discussion with other people, I think that in my eyes, that is a form of art as well.
Awesome. And then how can we get more information about Mr. Stuckey's podcast?
Well, I don't know if it's is it a blog?
Yeah, it's not a podcast. Yes, it's a blog series on LinkedIn. You can either just follow me on LinkedIn, or the hashtag is conversations with an S, conversations for change. If you do hashtag conversations for change, you will find all of the blogs, and feel free to challenge me on anything that I put out there. We're talking about everything from bringing your whole self to work, or to the wealth gap, everything under the sun, right? And again, there's no right or wrong answer. It's just people being authentic and really speaking and saying how they feel. A lot of times I feel like people, it's such a focus on the Black community, right? And a lot of times the conversation becomes black and white because that's kind of the genesis of America, but we're a melting pot now. There's so many different ethnicities, and the conversation always finds itself to kind of a black and white conversation. And I can tell you, I like to put the shoe on the other foot in everything that I do. And if I was white and everything seemed like it was just, focused on Black people, I would get tired of hearing that. I would get tired of hearing about my privilege. I would get tired of hearing about, all these different things, right? And so I try to have a balanced conversation and explain people why the focus is beyond me just saying it as a Black man. I'm not saying this as someone who's just selfishly focused on myself. I'm saying it because when you take away opinions and you look at the statistics, you can see that there's a glaring disparity as it relates to Black people relative to their white counterparts.
Awesome.
you.
Thank you for chiming in on the conversation. And Al, I believe your wife, Sanwana, has a question.
Okay, last one here, but really quickly, another, of course, big fan of Al Dashian, and one of the things
is that by default?
That's true. One of the things I admire so much about El Dashian is that he's just a really great example of not just speaking about change and inequality amongst his network, but also doing something every single day to make changes. So I wanted to see if you can share just some of the things that you do on a daily basis to start giving people ideas of just simple things that you can do to create change. You do a lot of whether it's small or really large scale events or community giving that have a huge impact. But I think all of them as a whole in aggregate have a really big impact and create really great change in the world. So wanted to see if you can just share some of the examples of things that you do every day to start creating change beyond just having that dialogue.
Thank you. I would say one is just the work that I do. I've been working in the nonprofit sector professionally since graduating from Northwestern 04. But before then, like I said, that instance of what I saw when I was a first or second grader, in fifth grade, I started a reading program. Again, I looked at it as, athletics was not going to be the only vehicle to get to where I needed to be. Is going to be education. So I literally started a reading program at elementary school in fifth grade for those students who either didn't want to go outside for recess or, it's Ohio. So if it's cold, snow, or rainy, you can come to the library, read a book, you read 10, you get an item. So unofficially, I've been doing this work since then. I think, again, it's my passion. If I didn't have bills or expenses, I would do the work that I do for free because I don't consider it as work. I consider it as a passion. I consider it connecting people to resources so they do have an opportunity to just have a better life. So I think that's one. Accessibility. Vicky knows, and most people that's on here who I know, I'm always on social media. So, anybody can reach out to me at any time. I've had the same phone number for 20 years, 20 plus years. So, having a conversation, having a presence on social media where people can reach out, ask a question, or just see the content that I put out where it's 99% of it is positive and I'm just trying to uplift, motivate, and inspire other people. And the fact that, I'm come from the neighborhood I came from, had the opportunity to go to Northwestern and being able to blend those two worlds and not change and be that same person, my authentic self. And then when it comes to events, it's all about connecting people to resources. So myself, I don't know if Stephen's still on, but we've done holiday charity events for like the last 4 years. We picked different audiences that we want to, support. The first year, I think we worked with just anybody who had a financial need around the holidays, and we gave out gifts and provided meals and gifts for over 500 people. The next year, it was a homeless population that we did events for. The last 2 years, another kind of sometimes forgotten population is the elderly. So we've been doing stuff with the elderly population the last couple of years. And the current event that I'm working on, myself and Stephen, is our essential workers, which tied to the COVID conversation. So about a month ago, I just had the idea or the thought process of, for one, I was a little bored. So I was like, I got to come up with another event. But our essential workers have been working tirelessly for even before the pandemic, and it's been longer hours, seeing family less, seeing death more. So what we wanted to do is create an opportunity to say thank you and show our appreciation. So in April, we're going to do an event at our local high school where we're going to provide do some thank yous, some recognition. We're going to have some local talent. We're going to bring in 3 comedians, 2 from Columbus, 1 from Detroit, have a comedy show, and then we're going to transition over to the cafeteria. We're going to do our version of a sip and paint. We're at the high school, so we won't be sipping, but it's our party and paint. And it's an opportunity really just, again, tying in our impact. It's a form of expression. And our whole goal and thought process with this is putting a smile on the faces of the people that's going to be there, saying thank you, and hoping that this is an opportunity for people to, for one, have a great night, forget about work, and hopefully motivate them to continue to kind of push on. COVID has not stopped. It's the second strain, maybe third strain going on. The vaccine is out, but some people are taking it, some people are not. So this could literally be an opportunity for one to say thank you, but also just a form of motivation to continue on. So that's just another opportunity. So like Sanwana said, every day I wake up with the mentality or thought process of how can I impact someone in a positive way every day.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Sheon Nix, inspiring. Thank you so much for spending time with us tonight. Thank you to all of you for being part of the solution here. Thank you for everyone for the insightful questions. We look forward to connecting with you again in 2 months for our next speaker series. Of course, you can find Al online, probably on Instagram and Facebook and all the other outlets. Look for Mr. Stuckey's information on LinkedIn, please. And of course, if you want any more information about our Art Impact Project, find us online on social media, on Facebook, on Instagram, and also on our website, artimpactproject.org. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for spending some time with us tonight. We really appreciate it, and we sincerely appreciate your time, talent, and treasure.
Thanks, everybody.
What? Remember, homework assignments.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, guys. Have a great night.
Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Stay well.